Hello, my name is Sakura Diesel, and welcome back to Film of the Year. As we continue into the 1890s, let's start off the last half of the decade by talking about the Lumiere brothers and their invention, the cinematograph. Our tale begins in Bonsoir, France, where our two main characters, Auguste Lumiere and Louis Lumiere, will be born on October 19th, 1862, and October 5th, 1864, respectively. During their childhood, the brothers would spend time in Bonsoir with their parents, Antoine Lumiere and Jean Lumiere. From the time they spent at Bonsoir, the parents would also give birth to their first daughter, also named Joan, before they would eventually move to Lyon, France, where they would once again give birth to their last two daughters, named Melina and Francine respectively. It was in this city that the Lumiere brothers would both attend a college known as La Martiniere, most likely studying business and photography, as their father opened a small photographic plate business in Lyon, and the brothers would work alongside with their father. It was in this shop that Louis would have his first breakthrough moment when he was just 17. In 1881, after experimenting with the equipment his father was making, Louis Lumiere would invent a new dry plate process for films. And it was this commercial success that made it possible for Antoine, along with his two sons, to make a new photographic factory in the Montplaisir suburb of Lyon, where by 1894 they were able to employ up to 300 people and produce about 15 million plates per year. That same year, Antoine would attend an exhibition in Paris to see the latest film device, a device that we all know today as the Kinetoscope, which we talked about in his own video. Antoine was impressed with the Kinetoscope, but he knew there was a market to make a better film camera and a much better way to view movies. So when Antoine was able to obtain a length of film strip from one of Thomas's concessionaires, he encouraged his sons to make a better film camera and a better projection device to where multiple people can view the same movie at the same time. So by the winter of 1894, the brothers began to experiment with both the kinetograph and the kinetoscope to see what they can do to make a better film camera. One thing the brothers noticed was how heavy the kinetograph was. Due to the size and weight of the camera, it would be very difficult for Edison and his team to take the camera outside if they wanted to shoot any outdoor scenes. So what the brothers did was to make a camera that was very light enough to make the camera easy to carry and film as many outdoor scenes as they wanted. The final result was a camera that weighed in about 16 pounds, about 7.3 kilograms. The second thing they focused on was the film strip. Much like the kinetograph, the Lumiere brothers' camera also took a 35mm film strip. However, instead of having the film running at 48 frames per second like the kinetograph, the camera would run at 16 frames per second due to the camera actually being operated by a hand crank as opposed to being powered by electricity like the kinetograph. Because of this, the camera made less of a noise and would also use less film when compared to the kinetograph. But the biggest thing that made the Lumiere brothers' camera a success was the way the film would move. For this, the brothers turned to French inventor and artist Emile Renard and his theatre opera key, which we also covered in his own video. The part of the machine that drew the brothers' attention were the film strips and the split pins that helped move the film strips along. With permission from Renard himself to study the machine, the brothers were able to come up with their own sprocket holes and two pins to help move the strip along, and then retract, which would leave the film stationary for a brief period. Louis would basically model this process after a sewing machine, and this was a process Edison considered using for his camera, but decided against it in favor for a continuous motion. Because of this, the images shown on the camera would project a much clearer image than that of the kinetograph. Not only was the camera able to capture film, but the camera could also project the film as well. All that was needed was a magic lantern lamp house with a gas or limelight illuminated, which the brothers would later add a glass flask of water as a condenser in case the light on the camera would no longer focus on the flammable film if the glass were to break due to overheating. With a working prototype of the camera completed, all the brothers needed was a name for their camera, and luckily they didn't have to look too far, for another French inventor by the name of Léon Bouilly was also working on a motion camera on February 12, 1892, originally calling it the Cinematographe Léon Bouilly, before shortening it down to just the Cinematograph on December 27, 1893. The name, the cinematograph, comes from the Greek word meaning writing in movement. However, due to the lack of money Bouilly needed to make his camera happen, he sold the brothers the rights to use his name for their camera, which they happily did, and filed a patent for their camera on February 13, 1895. With the name of their new camera, all the brothers needed to do was to figure out what their first film should be. Ultimately, they choose to film right outside their photographic factory, where they capture 3 different versions of the workers leaving for today. These films will later be known as the workers leaving the Lumiere factory. With the film in their hands, the brothers saw the private screen of their work at the Society for the Development of the National Industry for a small audience. It was met with warm reception, which promoted the brothers to shoot more films, one of which the brothers filmed a group of photographers leaving a rowboat to Leon as part of the Congress of Photographic Societies, where the brothers showed the members the results of the film on June 12, 1895, and they too were very impressed by the product. With these warm receptions, the brothers finally decided to screen the first 10 films to the public on December 28, 1895, at the Grand Café on Paris Boulevard des Capucines. So, with a backstory to how the cinematograph was made, let's take a look at the films the brothers have made and see how well they hold up today. So, remember my review on the Kinetoscope and the type of films I've shown in that episode? Well, that's basically what the Lumiere brothers films are like. Although there are some differences between the two where you can say it either helped the cinematograph or it hurt it. One aspect the cinematograph did have that helped outperform the Kinetoscope is the better crisp view of the films. Although I will admit, some of the pictures of the films have clearly not aged the best, quite literally, which is to be expected with old films like this, but depending on where you find them and how you watch these films, some of the quality of these films are pretty good for what they were at the time. They're crisp and clear, and another factor that really gives this camera and the Lumiere brothers a great advantage is the fact that the brothers were able to take this camera outside and film just about anything they want. This helps because before this, you had films that were always in one location. With the cinematograph, the Lumiere brothers were able to take their camera and film anywhere they want and shoot whatever scenes they wanted. For the first time in history since the invention of the camera itself, we now have moving pictures that can capture that same exotic feel, open people up to new places that they probably have never seen before, and even today, these films help us get a sense of what life was like before the turn of the 20th century. It really is sometimes crazy to think that we're able to see at least a sneak peek of a different time period in a medium that was still brand new at the time. I can't imagine how surprised the audience felt when looking at these early films. And with the help of other directors that the brothers would later hire, this would help gain the traction and popularity of new and future directors and inventors, just like the Kinetoscope once did a little over 2 years ago. With that said, much like the Kinetoscope, that's pretty much what most of the Lumiere brothers films were. Especially in the later years, most of their films are just people either doing everyday things, or you'll get a shot of a town and the people that are walking around said town. But you will get some entertainment value from these shorts. Take for example what some consider to be the early form of comedy, where this young lad over here comes over and plays a prank on the gardener by doing a simple placing his foot on the hose, until the gardener looks at the hose, and then he gets water squirted on him. I'll admit, there were a couple of short films from the Lumiere brothers that I still enjoy watching, and much like the Kinetoscope, they're short and get straight to the point. So if you ever need some time to kill, these films do provide some enjoyment, especially if you're the type of person that likes looking at old films and seeing what the culture was like back then. For me personally, much like the Kinetoscope, while I don't think all of these films age well, their short and simple nature, mixed with plenty of laughs and charms these films have, I think there's still some appeal to these films, and I still find myself enjoying certain parts. For my own personal rating, I gave the Lumiere brothers and their cinematograph a 7 out of 10. Now what about from a general audience? Well, much like what people thought on the Kinetoscope, it seems that the cinematograph today is seen as an important part of film history, and there are some shorts that some people still enjoy. But as a few have pointed out, while the films are still fun to watch for a while, there's not much in them that would make people want to seek out and find more films when, again, there are other short videos that have the same kind of format, but have an advantage because of editing. Based on the reviews I was able to find, I would say for a general audience that the Lumiere brothers and their cinematograph deserves a skim it. As with the Kinetoscope, because most of these films are in the public domain and easy to find on YouTube, I would say find some of these shorts and you'll still have a good time watching what people saw as entertainment back then. And that's mine and the audience's thoughts on the cinematograph. When the cinematograph was first released into the public, it took a while, but eventually the camera would prove to be a success for the brothers. Those that were able to view the films in public comment their surprise on the clear and crisp pictures, as well as the nice home movie feel the brothers were able to capture in some of the films. One such film, The Baby's Breakfast, was commented by Russian writer Maxim Gorky about the charming nature of the film featuring August and his wife and daughter, seeing a prominent future in filmmaking, and a couple of other people share that same opinion. All except the brothers themselves. While their cinematograph garnered a lot of attention and inspiration for future directors, the Lumiere brothers truly believed that the film industry was just going to be another fad that would fade away over time, and they didn't see the future of films as much as others did. As such, the brothers did not wish to sell the camera. However, they did stay in the film business for a couple more years, and would show off their camera around the world, in places like New York, London, Russia, Japan, and India, between 1896 to 1897. And the brothers would continue to make more films for a little while, most of the same type of home film genre, but they would still make other notable films throughout the latter half of the 1890s. One of these films being The Mechanical Butcher, which people argue to be the first ever science fiction film, which involves a live pig being put into this machine that could turn out various different kinds of pork products. Or their most famous film, Arrival of a Train at La Ciotat, was rumored to be the film where audiences were running away from the building because they thought the train was going to leap out of the screen and come right at them. However, there's a strong possibility that this event never really happened, and while the Lumiere brothers would eventually step away from cinema, they did make a film company to where certain people would be granted a cinematograph of their own, and they could make their own short films, mostly documentaries and newsreel type of films, and the Lumiere brothers would help produce and distribute it. So while the Lumiere brothers did eventually step down from directing, entering into the 20th century, they did live long enough to see the evolution in cinema and how filming would change the media forever. The brothers would eventually pass away, with Lewis being the first on June 6, 1948 at age 83, followed by Gus almost 6 years later on April the 10th, 1954 at age 91. So while this will be the only major episode featuring the brothers, it is possible we will still hear from them again, if only for a brief moment. So that will do it for the episode on the Lumiere brothers and their cinematograph. This has been Sakura the Diesel saying thank you so much for watching today's episode. If you have enjoyed the episode and learned something new, don't forget to hit that like button. If you're ready to see more episodes of Film of the Year, hit that subscribe button as well. Also, if you like Let's Plays, I have a gaming channel playing mostly any kind of games you would like to see me play. As always, this has been Sakura the Diesel saying thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later on the next episode of Film of the Year. Take care.